Welcome to a special month-long series of recoverHER, where we dive deep into the transformative world of psychedelics and their potential for healing mental health. In this series, we'll explore how substances like psilocybin, MDMA, ayahuasca, and ketamine are reshaping the landscape of mental health care. From anxiety and depression to PTSD and addiction, we'll uncover the groundbreaking science behind these therapies, the role of spirituality in healing, and the practical tools for integrating these experiences into everyday life. Join us as we journey through expert insights, personal stories, and the profound potential psychedelics hold for mind, body, and spirit healing. In this episode of recoverHER, we are joined by the dynamic duo, and we're not talking about ourselves. We're here with Lauren Taus, a licensed clinical therapist and a legit leader in the field of psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. She holds a master's degree in social work from Columbia University, and she brings a wealth of experience in trauma-informed care, somatic healing, and mindfulness practices. As the founder of Embodied Life, she seamlessly integrates traditional psychotherapy with the transformative potential of psychedelic therapy, including her training with the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies in MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD. And she is well known for her work in ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. Her approach focuses on reconnecting mind, body, and spirit to help clients achieve deep healing. She and her father, Dr. Stephen Taus, legit one of my favorite people on the planet. Dr. Steve he is an experienced internist working together to explore the potential of ketamine-assisted therapy. Dr. Taus, who has integrated holistic practices like acupuncture throughout his career, collaborates with Lauren in using these innovative therapies to support their clients' journeys towards well-being. Together, they bring a unique blend of sassiness, traditional medicine, and cutting-edge therapeutic practices, offering a fresh perspective on intergenerational healing and transformation. Let's do this! Ow! Welcome, you guys.
Well, thank you.
Already having a good time.
Yeah, lovely introduction.
We wish you guys were right here with us, though, on the sofa with these comfy, yummy pillows that Tracy doesn't like, but they sure are comfortable.
Yes.
Next time we'll do it all in one room, please.
So I want to say, first of all, I love you guys, and also thank you, because both of you have been instrumental in my own learning of ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. So that's how I came to know you both. I came to one of Lauren's life-changing trainings, and that's where I met Dr. Dad, as you're
Dr.
lovingly
Dad.
Called as well. So,
and she was my roommate.
Oh, I forgot about that.
That was a different trip. Tracy came back as staff.
exactly.
We wouldn't have started like that, Dad. We wouldn't have started like that.
No, I wouldn't have started that way. No, I wouldn't have started that way.
But I did forget you two are roommates. That was amazing.
Tracy didn't mind the big snores.
Oh, yeah.
Which is how that happened. There were obviously two separate beds, and it was all like,
Why is it got to be obviously?
Well, he's sexy.
He's a good-looking man.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, well, what if it's complicated, these beds.
You can make a movie called that. It's complicated.
No, but for real, the ethics are very important in the field.
No, absolutely.
Kind of drop it like we were roommates thing is like, we got to be clear about what's going on.
Well, then I went and stayed at Tracy's house.
Yeah, because you became good friends. You became good friends.
So good.
Family. We're family.
It is family, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, I was thinking about it. I was very excited for today's episode, and I was wondering, as you guys have both moved into the space of using psychedelics to help others and yourself, what's it like kind of from the inside out? Meaning, can you tell me your story as father and daughter and what the world of psychedelics has opened up for you two, as well as for your family?
So you want to go, or should I, honey?
I mean, I know my
You talked me into it.
Well, let me start, and then
okay,
Yes.
okay. I know she's going to say a certain thing. I know it's coming, but let her go.
So I'm very much the unlikely drug girl. You know, I wasn't doing psychoactive substances in high school or college, and I think that's important. I really like that about my story. I certainly like kind of welcome those who had different come froms, but you know, mine wasn't that. I wasn't happy, and so I was trying to be good and perfect and skinny, and drugs were on the radar. It was, you know, out of desperation and my own human suffering that I started to explore these kinds of experiences and partner with these kinds of plants and compounds. And I was kicking and screaming and resisting, and eventually found my way, and it was breakthrough and magical and deeply transformational immediately. My first experience ever, I literally just followed my brother around all day and into a journey. So it started for me with family. And the very next day, my brother and I were with my dad, and my dad said, "Hey, what'd you guys do last night?" And by the way, this guy over here, this Dr. Dad, this psychonautic Dr. Dad, he kind of smoked weed twice in medical school and didn't like it. He doesn't drink alcohol. So like me, he was also, you know, not doing these things, and he's missed the 60s. He wasn't tuning in and turning up. He wasn't doing any of that. And he asked, and I looked at my brother, and, you know, like, what are we going to do? Are we going to tell the truth? And I think that a lot of people would lie.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Like, I can't tell you how many places and spaces I've been in where folks don't, their parents and their intimate loved ones don't know where they are, because this is a controversial, complicated, stigmatized subject. And so I decided to tell my dad the truth. And he looked at me maybe like I had 17 heads and said, "You fucking doing drugs?" Said, "You went to fucking Colombia. What the fuck is this?" And ultimately, you know, it was a multi-year journey until he said yes to an experience. And I was being in this sort of rookie conversion move, wanting so much for him to have an experience. And he said, no, I don't need that. And he didn't, by the way. It's very important to note that he didn't need it, right? Yeah. There's from the seat that I sit in, and the work that I speak to, it's about like clinical therapeutic interventions. That did not constitute my father at all. He didn't need this. Now there's always workarounds, things like that, right? And so much benefit that well people can experience. So, you know, my father was watching me train, like in very legitimate atmospheres, by other medical providers, other physicians, doctors like himself. He likes doctors. If you've got an MD behind your name, he likes you. You know, he respects you. You know, he's an RN, less so. Like, he'll respect you, but doctors, like,
more credibility there.
And if you're a Jewish doctor,
then even
better.
Even better.
too.
So he was watching me train with other doctors and neuroscientists and researchers, and was coming to understand, you know, through his own research as well, that there's clinical applications, but still, I don't fucking need that. And it wasn't until, you know, again, many years where he decided that he'd be amenable to an experience, and of course didn't know where to start, but I did. And I brought him to a place that would be comfortable for him. And that looked like another medical office, maybe a little bit more comfortable. Like I don't know if you're in your office right now, Tracy, but you know, it looks good. It's like kind of a domestic, kind of nice vibe. Another psychiatrist, another Jewish psychiatrist, and a man his age from New York, kind of similar accent. They could have been brothers. At the time, it was my mentor, Dr. Phil Wolfson. And, you know, my father had his first experience with, you know, medical context, ketamine, intermuscular injection, and he and I went flying in together. So that's sort of like how
you had a session together.
Yeah. He initially, like, that morning, he woke up and was like, "I want you to be present." I was like, "Cool, no problem. I eat," and I did. And you're not really supposed to eat before ketamine journey. And also, I was like, whatever. When I got there with Phil was like, "I thought you guys were going to do this together," and I'm like, "Fuck it, let's go." into the ether, into the inner outer space, together.
And Steve, what was that experience?
So it was a fabulous experience. You know, I mean,
say more.
You know, I said, you know, I'm pretty sensitive to medicine. I don't really need a high dose. He gave me a dose not that high and relative to my weight and all. And he said, if you need more, tell me. So after a couple of minutes, he said, how are you doing? And this is what I said exactly. I said, beautiful, just like that. And then there's a couple of minutes later, he said, well, if you need a little more, so he checked me, I don't know, it was probably close to what I was just going out space. And he said, how are you? And I said, this is nothingness. I was totally separated from myself. It was beautiful though, and I had a great experience, which set me to going to make me want to, take the training, learn about it.
Also said in that first journey, he said, if you haven't done this, you haven't lived.
And then I was just one thing, because I've taken the substance a number of times since, and every time, whatever I get, whatever I learn, is always a tremendous amount of love that comes out of me. I just feel so loving, and when the kids are around, my Lauren or my son, I just say, oh, you are so precious to me. You're so wonderful. I love you so much. It's like you can't. It's so intense and powerful. It's like you just can't feel it. It's so good, It's and that feeling over the course of all these years now is just exponentially increased, not just for my kids, but everybody. I'm more loving. I'm more compassionate. I'm just a better version of myself. I've never been happier. I'm 80 years old. I mean, there's how many people, I look at people 80, man, I was just at a luncheon, man. People are walking hunched over. I already been swimming in my pool at 65 degrees every day. I mean, I'm doing, I'm blessed. I'm fortunate.
By the way,
I'm sorry.
That's not language that you would have used.
No. Right. That's what I was going to say. What was pre-ketamine journey, Steve?
Well, I was not unhappy.
Well, again, he met no clinical indications for ketamine.
Yeah, I mean, Phil Wilson liked to say it's also for the well-adjusted people. So, and he likes to say people should try it if you want to try it 2-3 times, because it's transformational. And I've done with hundreds and hundreds of people already that we've given the substance to. And so,
I think that part of what's interesting here is the relationship, right? And what's
and also what's happened, because I had my dysfunction, everybody had theirs. I wasn't so, even though I was loving her all the time, whatever, my stuff was too much for her. And she was kind of really pissed off at me and underneath it all. And so all of that stuff, we've healed all that kind of misery. And I directly attribute it to substance, to opening up, to being able, I was the kind of guy that I'm going to be right, even though whatever, I'm going to be right. And I'm kind of a tough guy. It's my way. And, I'm soft now. And it's like, I don't need to be right. I don't need to be perfect. I mean, I'm open. And that I got directly as a result of, the work in psychedelic work for myself, not just with people.
And Lauren, do you feel like, when do you feel like the opportunity opened up for you all to connect, not from your, ego, but from a place of love, but at the same time, really, there are things that you need to jump into, to change the relationship, to heal old patterns. Do you feel like you could have done that outside of the psychedelic work?
No. And I think, my dad spent a lot of time, like years and years, decades, like efforting to really heal and explore himself and his challenges and his, family history and how his mama with trauma, all the things. Like he was working hard, like working.
I was psychoanalyzed. I mean, I spent a long time in analysis.
And it didn't really translate to an embodied shift.
Right.
And, I will say, I think he had been softening, but my relationship with my dad was difficult for many years. And, I think that I'm crystal clear. And by the way, ayahuasca has made it like abundantly evident to me, like how much devotion my father has always had, even when I didn't understand it. And I didn't, like, it didn't make sense to a little girl, but like the level of devotion was of the highest variety. And, I told him over and over, like, I think you can have more authenticity. I think you can have more access to your heart. Like, if you want that, Like the invitation is open. And, you know, I think these things are still kind of, and by the way, they are scary. Like, these are very, very explosive.
What does that even mean? Right.
Right. And like for him at 75 to say yes. And
you're brave, Steve.
Oh, like what I attribute that to, look how cute he is. He's all,
I know, he's sitting back going, yeah, I am. I'm all here now.
It's like,
all of me.
But I think he really trusted his creation over his own fear. Like he was willing to go. I think in many ways to be closer to me and also to see what's possible. And, you know, over the last 5+ years where he's been exploring in this way, we cleaned up a lot of the mess that us. And of course, relationships get a lot of residue. There's a lot of sediment and shit that gets stored up over the years and years and years, especially with a parent. And there was a period of time when, like, I was, as my father mentioned, like, good and pissed off, and he let me be. He really let me be. He let me yell and scream, and I had to, because I didn't. I was just so shut down, and fear was not allowed, and I'm sorry, anger wasn't allowed. I think culturally we're pretty allergic to anger, so it gets weird. But like, he received my experience, and then in doing so, I was able to really let it go. And so where we are now is like we have these incredible tools that create these beautiful intimate moments. And whenever there is some sort of dissonance, and it's not like it's all gone, like we're still complicated ecosystems bumbling about and bumping into each other at times. But when there is a problem, we have language, and we both have a much deeper resource inside of ourselves to take responsibility, to you know, be in the space of creating space for each other and loving one another as we are, like as humans. And it's extraordinary, because again, like I didn't like that guy growing up. I didn't.
It is extraordinary. Yeah.
And it's like,
I would say, you know, the interesting thing is, you know, in our retreats, she always calls me Dr. Dad. And obviously I'm the oldest guy there. And they're often, you know, people are in their, you know, 40s, some little 30s, but, you know, people connect with me, you know, they relate to this good father, loving father. And invariably, they'll say, women will come to me and say, hey, would you talk to my father? You know, I'd love you to talk to my father. And nobody has taken me up on that. So the father was too frozen in their ways of being that even their daughter, you know, they can't do it. So it shows how, you know, how difficult this is to, you know, get somebody that's older to be a little more open, you know?
And I think it's so important, because oftentimes in my clinical practice, and then also just conversations, I think sometimes we don't focus enough on the family healing, and we don't focus enough on, you know, people, you know, of Steve's age, and the importance of not only what that can look like for them, but for the whole family. Oftentimes, you know, it's, you know, the kids or the grandkids where, like, you know, like the dysfunction is being focused on, you know, you go get healed, and we'll be happy that you're going to go get your healing or treatment. But, you know, they're not jumping in or willing to jump in as part of that equation. So,
and of course, the symptoms are never presenting in a vacuum. So for me, I like to focus on family work, not only because I do it, right? Like this is an active process for me, but also because it's the truth of the matter. It's none of these kind of diagnoses are coming out of thin air. Like this is a systemic issue. And when I have like more than one participant in the field, I have a vastly bigger picture of what's going on. And even like the plumber in me, I get to see, like, from a communication perspective, like where the pipes are clogged, where I need to take out my plunger, like what's actually happening in real time. And where can we create more ease and flow and truth telling, and amplify the courage, right? Which of course is based on fear. Like we're scared of each other. We don't want to hurt each other's feelings. We're scared there might be repercussions. Like love is conditional. We have always chosen, like, you know, as little people, belonging over authenticity, and that gets deeply ingrained and practiced in all the other relations. But like, you know, if I'm working with anyone, I'm immediately working with their family, immediately, whether or not I'm talking to them or not, when I like to talk to them. And especially with the psychedelics, because like psychedelics are so profoundly disruptive, and we're designed for, you know, habit, and that's great. But like, if we want to change, we need to disrupt. And so how do we prepare the system to hold that as a person steps into deeper levels of personal alignment?
Lauren, okay, say more about what you just touched upon. Psychedelics are deeply disruptive, is what I heard you say. Can you expand on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, they're explosive. Like psychedelic experience is explosive. I really want for people to have a lot of inner resource, which sometimes takes time to cultivate.
Yes.
And as a provider that's sitting in the seat of working with people who have real challenges, I'm not just doling out drugs. Now, there's a lot of companies that are doing that, and I'm publicly noisy about the problem there. You know, it's like a lot of glorified drug dealers. Got to love a drug dealer in this atmosphere, which is wildly unethical, right? Like lets people get what they need. As a whole other conversation. But if you're working therapeutically, you need to have a very clear relationship and connection and understand what the inner workings are of a person's life, so that if you explode it, there's some sense of like how to navigate and how to integrate, how to put the pieces back together. Because integration implies disintegration, and we're going into deeper disintegration when we bring on a psychoactive compounder plant. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I love the way you describe it. Tell me what your thoughts are, both of you, either one of you, when you start to voyage into the unconscious. You know, you're bringing so much of the unconscious into the conscious mind. And it's obviously profoundly affected the relationship that you two have. So tell me more about that.
Well, our ego is sitting there, and it's judging, it's being afraid, it's desire. It's all totally separated from the rest of us. If you really want love and you got to go into spirit, you're going into another realm. If you want God, you're in another realm. So the beauty of all psychedelics is they take the ego and all its defenses and all its desires and angers and judgment offline. And so now you're exposed to pure consciousness, and you're exposed to everything, who you are. So now you're going to be able to explore. You'll have feelings. You'll have, depending on what substance too, you're going to get information about yourself that you may or may not like, but you need to know. So that's the purpose of really having a therapist, a guide, somebody that understands where you're going, because otherwise you'll precipitate oftentimes an emergency. People go in the emergency room. It's too much.
When you're exploring these non-ordinary states of consciousness.
Yeah, because it could be, depending on the drug, you could get pretty scared. I mean, you could be frightened. So people need to be, taught what's going to happen or what can happen, and to understand that they're safe and it's a round trip ticket. You're coming back, even if you're scared to death and you think you're dying and whatever. I mean, all that happens.
Have you had that experience?
I have personally had that experience
where you're scared.
Oh,
you've met your fear.
Dying type scared. I've been where I was just in the throes of death. I mean, you get scary experiences. It's going to happen, but they teach you. I mean, those are the experiences that you really learn from. So the thing that you really are afraid of, the thing that scared the crap out of you, you're going to learn the most from it.
Yeah, I think.
So that's where you need faith, and faith is really, like Lauren was saying, it's the opposite of fear.
Right.
But you've got to have somebody there that can support you, that allows you to know, listen, I know this is going to, if you tell them, it could be scary, but you're going to come back.
To help facilitate that journey.
And the beauty of this, on the other side of your fear, is freedom and trust in yourself and confidence. And I don't think you can't get it to the degree that without having dues in these things, as far as I'm concerned. That's my personal experience, as well as people that have been transformed and successful and so on.
I get a little nervous when people aren't nervous.
Yeah.
The letters of the word scared are the same as sacred. There's awe.
That's beautiful.
Right? It's like awe and awful. It's like, control.
I mean, before I take anything, and I don't do it much these days, but if I do it, there's a certain amount of fear that you just don't know what's going to happen.
And there's a reverence. There's a
Right.
reverence, so it's appropriate. And I wish that we walked around with an iota of that much reverence for life, right? Because life is really the biggest drug, and we're all on it. But when we're partnering with a plant or compound that has the capacity to change our perspectives and give us visionary experiences or deeper experiences in our bodies, et cetera, we're moving around the default mode network, the brain police. It's like kind of sending them out, and all these new connections can come online, and that can be any number of different things. It doesn't have to be hard or scary, but of course sometimes it is. And I like to invite people to maybe pick pillars. Like, what do they want to come back to if they're getting overwhelmed? Like, I want to invite, a study of something as they're approaching the unknown. For example, a peace, right? So if you're picking peace as a pillar, you're also studying all the places you don't feel peace.
Sure.
Right? Or, if there's a lot of fear and overwhelm, like, can you find some thread of light? Yeah, can you make it up? Right. And just, coming back to, my dad said soul. And, by the way, this guy was a fierce atheist until all this.
Who now believes in God?
After Dad was an atheist, you were an atheist too?
Yeah, and I was agnostic too, but I didn't believe. But now I
fiercely atheist.
Yeah.
Now what would you consider yourself?
But yeah, I'm a believer, not in any traditional sense, but I believe in in God. It's God. I met God. I've been with God.
Tell me about your God, your higher power. I want to know your God.
In different experiences, I've been with God. Ketamine, a number of times, breathing with God, in the hands of God, in unity with God, and the whole universe, oneness. And so these are all experiential. These are no ways. I can't prove this to anybody. I can't. I can just tell you what I experienced, but. It's not like you're reading the Bible or anything like that, although there's a lot of wisdom in it. It's not, I don't go with that story. But I don't, Buddha said, and I like this, he said, don't believe anything I tell you unless you experience it.
Yes.
And that's experience is so valuable. So people could say, well, it was just a drug that gave you that experience. Okay, that's your opinion. And maybe that's true, but whatever it is, I have a change. I'm changed as a result of it.
Softness.
It's like Brian Weiss, as a psychiatrist at Yale. He came up with past lives and so on. And they said, oh, it's all, made up and so on. He said, you know what? Whether it's made up or not, people change from it. It helps them. But they experience these past lives and how it impacted their current issue. So
if you even just think about the pains that we experience as human beings, any one of them, whether they be as simply as like not feeling attuned to a parent, or which is a massive thing.
Right.
Like if it's even just like the subtlety of like, mom wasn't really attuned to me. It was a fucking huge trauma, but like it's not war, right? It's not right. Maybe it's the same level kind of impact, but how can we shift the perspective and attune to ourselves? And in such a way that we're able to then attune. And how can we maybe then cultivate some compassion and understanding for like what was actually going on for mom? And maybe at first we need to be really good and pissed off. Like, I never hold forgiveness as a goal ever, right? Is that where I'd like people to be? Sure. Yeah, because it's good for them. It feels good. But like, we got to like go through our anger first. And like, let that be like, and sometimes it's like boundaries. Sometimes you get to choose, like, I actually don't want that relationship anymore at all. Cool. Okay.
I'm wondering with you too. So, take me inside a clinical session, because I was thinking as you were talking, so you're doing ketamine assisted psychotherapy, Lauren and Steve, and there's this profound love and healing that's taken place between you and your dad, and the two of you are with someone coming for healing, and Dr. Dad is keeping that person safe and from a medical perspective, administering the ketamine, monitoring vital signs, and you're taking them on this journey, and then together you're both lovingly holding space for this person and then helping them process. Do you think there's some extra magic that happens,
I do.
In the
Because
diet?
we're a great model.
Mm-hmm.
We are a great model. I mean, not just
to the idea of us being a model. Yes, like we love each other and we're very, very, very close. And sometimes like he pisses me off, and sometimes a patient or a client will feel that. And like, and how do we work through that? It's also like the grit and truth of real relationship, right? It's like there's like such realness in it. And like, we can laugh it off. We can talk about it. If like, it's not like it happens a lot, but like I'm aware of it, and perhaps even more so than a client or patient, right? Like if I have a moment of dissonance with my dad, which I've had, right? Like he's my dad. Are you kidding me? Like he's my dad. Like who isn't annoyed by their parents like pretty regularly, right? Like, and I feel like my level of irritation with my dad is like so tiny, so tiny. But like, is it there sometimes? Sure. And I'm so aware of it because of like the space and place within which we operate.
Sure.
But I also believe that like there's an undeniable like love that we've worked on, that like translates to real lived closeness that you feel.
And it's transmitted. What I was going to say before you asked that question, what was on my mind was, my main goal in life is to be loving, especially to myself, and forgiving to myself for everything. So if I come up with something that comes, some recurrent thought or some issue or some choice I made in my life that I would have said in the past as a mistake, I don't even use the word mistake anymore. I just use choice. I forgive myself. I mean, you have to learn from it. But so it's number one, love myself, forgive myself for everything, and be grateful. And try to do that with everybody else. So I'm inside when I'm working with her, and I'm not just sitting there giving the drugs. I mean, she's the main therapist, and that's the way it is. But I have things to say at appropriate times, and I'll ask questions. I'll do, so it's not like I'm just sitting there like a mummy. I mean, I love doing this kind of therapeutic thing. But it's the transmission of that caring, that loving. I mean, and every therapist should be loving their patient. I don't mean in the loving kind of caring way, and not
absolutely.
I mean, that's sexual or any kind of weird way. But
obviously, and like loving our clients is essential. Carl Jung called it unconditional positive regard, right? That's fancy clinical jargon for "I love you," and like
that was Rogers.
Roger, sorry, you're right. But yeah, like to love them really like clearly, and to love them together, really, really beautiful.
And I've heard you both say in our conversation the importance of truth, and I'm going to think on that, afterwards, in part of the healing for all of us, there has to be room for the truth. And so often I think the truth is missing in relationships, whether you're trying to, you feel like you're trying to protect the other person, or whether you're trying to reject parts of yourself. So you're not able to be authentic. And so it sounds like truthfulness has been really an important part of both of your individual journeys, and then, the repair work together.
Only the truth wears well. I made up that. But you know what this reminds me? In this book, In the Lap of the Buddha, I told you about that a while ago, this Gavin Harrison, he had some great advice. And what he said was, before whatever you're going to say, he said, if it's truthful but not helpful, don't say it. And if it's helpful but not truthful, don't say it. But if it's helpful and truthful, find the right time to say it. So there's a certain, judgment about what you're going to say, but the essence is really, you really want to be able to tell your truth, tell you who you are without bullshit. So people know, because then you're going to grow, the person will know. But it's not so easy to do that. Like you said, Tracy, people are afraid to hurt the person, or they feel ashamed to say it. There's all that stuff. And so that's a byproduct of all of this work should be, you could say who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really great point, and a good distinction to make too, between truth and lies of omission, not saying anything at all. It's not lost on me. I've learned so much from both of you. And this month for our podcast, recoverHER, we've dedicated it to the impact that psychedelics have had or will be having and continue to have on mental health and psychiatric well-being for sure. And we've touched upon ayahuasca and MDMA and ketamine, and all three of those medicines, when used with reverence and intention and setting, there's such the common denominator that I hear every single one of you and one of all of us collectively talk about are their connection of to God and loving themselves and feeling that amount of love. It's just a beautiful thing to hear over and over again and reinforced in everybody's individual journeys.
Agreed. And Lauren, you have your finger on the pulse in the psychedelic world, and you're connected up with MAPS, and the MDMA, as many people know, this summer, and unfortunately, the MDMA didn't get approved for, in the clinical trials. What are you hearing, or what are you suspecting will happen in terms of what comes next for MDMA and PTSD?
The mission will absolutely be carried forward. It's not going to die off. There's a lot of uncertainty around how these different organizations will be impacted and who's going to run forward. But there's no way that this is just going away. And it's really unfortunate what happened over the summer. Someone asked me, actually, I was giving a talk at Esalen last week, and someone asked, were we even prepared? If had it been made legal? And the answer, in my opinion, is a resounding absolutely fucking not. And we're already doing it. And like legalizing these medicines reduces cross-contamination and creates the opportunity for more accountability and responsibility. And the FDA has no idea how to engage with this kind of medicine. It's an entirely different way of relating to medicine.
And healing.
Correct. And like the way that we're doing it now is an abysmal failure. And to nobody's really blame, right? I think that everybody is trying. And, to call Paxil, Zoloft, and cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy effective interventions for complex PTSD is an absolute joke.
Yep.
And we have better tools that we are already using, and we will continue to. And, I'm hopeful because when I lose hope, I get depressed. And so I have to keep vectoring my attention in a good way.
Right.
That we can find ways to convince the public and the governing bodies that regulate. But our drug policy has never been based on science.
And, and there was, a lot more conversation just the last couple weeks with psilocybin and a phase 2 study that looks really good in terms of, looking at reduction of depression and remission. But what was interesting to me is, I'm curious both of your thoughts on this is, we're using medical models, which are very, very important. But as we heard earlier in our conversation, there's so much more like context and understanding, to the psychedelics. And
I think one of the things that's really percolating in me, and I'm gestating and will be birthing in the right time, excuse me, is to marry medicine worlds. Right. Yes. Western medicine is absolutely a wisdom tradition.
Right.
Absolutely a wisdom tradition. And so to the knowledge that you, Tracy and Dad, carry, I bow my head, you guys have been in deep devotion to learn a language and a system within which to understand the human body and psyche in ways that are incredible and miraculous. And simultaneously, there are other wisdom traditions that need to be married here. Right? It's not ayahuasca is not new.
No.
right? Like psilocybin, it's not a trend. It's like trending. I mean, it's sort of trending,
No.
but it's not new. Like
Yeah.
these things have been stewarded by people for thousands of years in traditions that like deserve great respect and reverence.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we need to approach them with that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. We recently talked with Hamilton Southern because when I started, after you all helped train me in the ketamine, I really wanted to bring in some of the wisdom and tradition, that has existed in ayahuasca, for thousands of years. And how could I bring some of that into my treatment with folks?
I mean, we are all indigenous to something. And my practice is a spiritual practice, right? If someone isn't inclined, like, I'm not the right fit. Right. And for providers out there, for people who are doing this, like, do it authentically,
Right.
like, do it within good guardrails, like, do your own work, but like, do it the way you do it. It's like, back to the authenticity and the truth, right? It's your fullest expression in the way that you practice, assuming that it's done in a good way that's like trained and educated and within the right kind of boundaries. Like, that's the medicine.
I think you guys are the medicine, and there's not, Steve and I have had so many conversations about, our parents and grandparents, and there's not one friend of mine that doesn't, wonder, about their family or want deeper healing for their family. And I'm so grateful for the work that you guys have been brave enough to do. And I think everyone deserves a chance at that.
Definitely.
I certainly agree. And, we started the call kind of naming the chaos of moving from one system to my
Yeah.
to do that. And, families are often the hardest places for people. Our most intimate relations are often the most fraught with difficulty. And like, we are all really one family here. Like, we are one family here with the earth, and we have deeply forgotten of our relatives, the trees, and as we like cut them down for profit. And like, we've forgotten our own kind. We have forgotten, and the ask is to wake up.
Wake up.
Wake the fuck
Open
up.
your eyes with compassion for like the various experiences that have created greed and fear and and rage and whatever else. And like, we can work with all of it, but let us like vector in a good way, potentially with medicine and in right relationship, hopefully with our families, towards like love and kindness and reciprocity and generosity and goodness. And I'm here.
It's all a spiritual transformation, really, everything. Otherwise, you're sitting in your ego with all this judgments and
That's right.
all these attachments, and we all have them. And it's a challenge to really sort of be in that spiritual connection and be with oneness and be with everybody. We're all everything is God. In my money, it's all God.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's my view. I mean, I'm not I was a scientist, but I mean, if you ask some scientists, well, there's all these quarks and this and that and small particles, and where the hell did it come from? Nobody can answer that question. They can say it all started with that, but where did it come from?
I'm interested, Steve, to hear from the vantage point where you sit at today with all of your experience and wisdom and age. Where do you think it's all going? That same hope that Lauren has.
People have a tendency to just pick the worst. I mean, it's ego doing that. It's all fear. I mean, fear is running everything. And if you look yourself, and I've looked myself many times, the choices that you make often, and the ones you didn't like, are often based on you didn't manage your fear well enough at the time, generally. And so, the Earth's been around. The Earth's been around a long time. We've had ice ages, we've had floods, we had volcanoes, we had all kinds of things. People say, "Oh, we have all this climate stuff. We got all this. Everybody's fighting, they're killing each other." I don't know what will happen with us. I don't know that. I mean, I'm optimistic. I think the Earth is going to survive. I don't know anymore. And I think personally, I'm just going to be loving. I feel better that way. For the past 6 months, I don't watch the news. I don't even have regular television. I don't read the news. It's all negative. It's all calculated to make you angry, to keep you
I agree.
scared. So people say, hey, did you hear what happened over there? And I said, well, what happened? And in the old days, I used to feel, well, to be a responsible citizen,
Right.
I
You had to
know
stay
all this stuff.
informed.
Well, I don't think, I mean, I'm going to vote. I know what I'm going to do. Hopefully that'll change things. I don't know if that changes anything anyway.
Right.
But I think it just, I'm not interested in all of this negative stuff. All negative. You don't turn on I mean, I don't have the television regularly. I stream things, but it's all negative. It's all calculated to keep you very pissed off with information which may or may not be true.
And listen to how pissed off you are just talking about it. So
Yes.
be mindful of like how the energy continues to run in our bodies.
Yeah,
This is so much fun.
Good pickup.
Yeah, I know we gotta wrap it up. I just want to say thank you so much to both of you, and let's just keep loving each other and remembering loving each other isn't, always gentle and easy. It requires work and truthfulness, and you guys are a great model for that. And we can't wait to see you again soon.
Thanks for being family. We'll do it in person next time.
I'd love to. Thanks for having us. Really special.
And as a final, I'm really proud of you two, both of you also. You're doing, and this kind of putting this together, this recovery, this is a wonderful thing. It'll be healing for people. They'll learn. And I think and I'm happy to see you guys in your own relationship that's flourishing. So it makes me.
Thank you. We love you
We
guys.
love you. We love you. We love you.
The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. The use of psychedelics, including those discussed in this podcast, may be illegal in certain jurisdictions, and we do not advocate or condone illegal activities. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any decisions regarding your health, mental well-being, or the use of substances. Psychedelics can have profound effects, and it is essential to approach them with caution, awareness of the law, and under the guidance of licensed professionals where applicable. Use of any substances should be in accordance with local laws and regulations. We care about your well-being here at recoverHER.